Hi everybody, and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. This post is from the subreddit Relationships, and it's by user Taway and some numbers. Me, 31 male European, with my girlfriend, 29 female Chinese, of 1 year, very different cultural expectations of financial management. My girlfriend and I are coming up on the 1 year mark of our relationship, and that's brought with it some conversations about our futures and our future together. Something that came to light in a casual discussion was that we have completely different expectations of how financial and household management would and should work. I think that we should be contributing equally and get an equal say in financial decisions. This probably wouldn't be too easy, and we would both need to work hard to accept compromises. She has a simpler plan. She should be 100% in control of everything. Her view would be that I would reroute my paychecks into an account in her name, and she would pay all bills out of that, and I might be given an allowance. This isn't the first time she's brought up this idea. It was mentioned very casually about 6 months ago. I assumed that it was some sort of joke because it was just too ludicrous to believe. She's angry with me now for disagreeing with this plan because she says we've talked about it, and because I didn't object, that meant I agreed. Her point of view is that this is just how marriages work in China. It's how her parents, divorced acrimoniously, did it, and she can't imagine any other way. My point of view is that marriage should be a partnership, and we should be looking for a compromise as equitable as possible. I won't be giving up 100% of my financial freedom under any circumstances. I'm not Chinese, and we're not in China. Also, she's more than happy to adopt Western standards for things that suit her. I also have another concern. She feels she needs to send money home to support her parents in retirement. This is another cultural difference that I'm having trouble accepting. My parents are lower middle class, have worked their entire lives with their eyes on retirement savings, and are now approaching retirement with good pensions. My girlfriend's parents, who I have not met, seem to be very well off. One is a pediatric surgeon and the other owns a successful business. But from what my girlfriend has told me, they're very far from frugal and don't have any retirement plans beyond having their daughter send them money in support. I'm not crazy about the idea of using our money, which should be supporting our family and future, to prop up their lifestyles. Right now, we seem to be at an impasse. She won't even discuss any arrangement other than the one that she's envisioned. And I'm unwilling to compromise on the need for compromise. Does anyone have experience of similar cultural clashes who might be able to offer guidance? Oof, OP, this is a really tough spot that you're in. When it comes to finances, that's a place that couples need to be in agreement. Sure, you can disagree on which sports team to back up and stuff like that, but agreeing on the financial and household management is a key component to a good relationship. I, for one, am on your side. I believe that couples should have an equal say regarding what the money is spent on or how it's spent. But I also understand that there are cultures, like your girlfriend's, that just don't work that way. Like you say in your paragraph, you are at an impasse, and if it's impossible to compromise on this, then I think you both need to sit down and reconsider your relationship. What are you willing to let go of in order to move forward, or is this the end? Now, there's one thing that you said that kind of jumps at me, is that she's more than happy to adopt Western standards for things that suit her. So there could be a little bit of wiggle room with that argument, however, it's very key on how you say it because she might take it as an attack. And what do you guys think, or what would you do if you were in OP's shoes? Let me know in the comment section, and now let's move on to the community comments to see what they said. FTJL Stir says, on a side note, the wife controlling all income with an allowance to the husband is also a Japanese thing. Probably something to do with women being in charge of the household. The supporting parents in old age thing is very much a Chinese Asian culture thing, so much so that China relaxed the one-child policy partially because it was causing issues with caring for seniors and retirement. I strongly suspect that what you and your girlfriend have are incompatible cultural mores. If you can't agree to compromise, you'd be better splitting up. Some things are never going to work themselves out. Cardi B Tot Queen says, my mother is Shanghainese and I live in London. This isn't just a cultural thing, but also a self-serving thing. Women are often encouraged to find a nice man with a good job, the big three, house, car, job, and that men should pay for the bill all the time. they should be the perfect gentleman, and that you, as the girlfriend, shouldn't really bother too much on your side. In fact, my mom was telling me this exact thing today, that it's right for me not to give my white boyfriend too many things because he should be the one to gift me things and pay for meals. She also picks and chooses what Western values suit her best. For example, Western tradition suggests that the bride's family pays for the wedding. My mother said she would apply that for my brother's marriage, but in my marriage, she would say it is Chinese tradition for the husband's family to pay. Our whole life is built up to find a good husband. It's kind of sad how valueless our lives are meant to be. You go to university not to get a degree, but to hopefully find a nice match so that once you marry, you don't have to even lift a finger. In my conversation with my mom today, she told me that she controls her boyfriend's finances. I had no idea this was a thing. She is a very controlling woman though. I feel super sorry for her boyfriend. The finances thing are the least of his problems. Anyway, there is a chance that you can get around to a more equal Western way of valuing things, but it really depends on whether she truly respects and values you, and I really hope she does. Good luck, dude. Snorana says, I am Taiwanese and I have many Asian friends, and the way finances are handled varies. I actually didn't know it was common in some Asian cultures for the wife to handle all the money. But really, it doesn't matter what other Chinese people do. What isn't common is how completely inflexible your girlfriend is being. My mom didn't handle the money, so my dad does it. He didn't raise a stink about how it's supposed to be done. I agree with other posters that she is just using her Chinese culture to get her way. I'm sure this isn't the first time she has encountered cultural differences outside of China and had to adjust. She is refusing to see your point because she doesn't want to and using her culture as an excuse. Additional information from OP's comments. A bit of background on us. She moved to England in her early teens. We live in London and I'm from another country in Northern Europe. And she has lived here for more than half of her life. Her social circle is very diverse. White, black, Asian. She has dated mostly non-Asians before me, so it's not like she has no experience or knowledge of other cultures. We don't live together, though we spend almost all of our time in her place. She owns her house and I rent a flat. We both work and are reasonably successful. I switched careers a couple of years ago and I'm getting out of entry-level work now. I expect my salary to increase significantly over the next 5 years. She's reached VP level in her career but has suffered a setback after being driven out of one company. She started a new job at a lower pay grade but with much better prospects. Overall, I would guess she earns more than me now and will continue to do so throughout our careers, unless I hit lottery level odds with a successful startup. Unfortunately, we haven't even talked about other big relationship deal breakers like how the kids will be raised with regards to discipline, religion, etc. because finance was the first topic and we seem to have gotten stuck. I think the yours, mine, and ours method of money management is a balanced way to go. Each person contributes a set amount, either 50-50 or a split based on income, to the joint expenses for the relationship. And this isn't the first time she's dug her heels in about something because she thinks it's normal. Every time she's insisted on things being a certain way because it's her culture, I've just gone with the flow, even if I think it's annoying. Things like she wants me to hold her handbag, umbrella, shopping bags, anything really. I balked at this at first, but in her words, I can't imagine carrying things when I have you to do it for me. I don't really like being treated like a pack mule, but it didn't seem worth having a fight over. She also insists when walking down the street, I walk closer to the road than she does, as protection. I don't really care about this at all, except to think it's quite silly. I also have had to insist that I don't pay for everything we do as a couple. She would expect that while I'm around, she never pays for anything at all. After a few weeks of that at the start of the relationship, I had to put my foot down about splitting bills more equally. She still seems upset every time I ask her to chip in for a meal or whatever, and I probably end up paying for the majority of our expenses. I'd guess about 70%. Anyway, it's upsetting her greatly that I'm pushing back on this point. This is the first time I've stood my ground on an issue that I feel strongly about. I think she's upset because she hasn't seen me behave like this before. And for those wondering about her being pushed out of her VP level job, she had identified something that the company was doing wrong that exposed them to a significant financial risk. She brought her calculations to her boss and boss's boss, but they declined to act because it was their mistake and they didn't want to admit to the error. They subsequently pushed her out of important meetings and other avenues of communication. Eventually, the financial risk was realized and her whole department was being blamed. She was cast to the wolves, though I'm not sure on what grounds. Alright, well, the community agrees that if the cultural difference is too big and unmovable, then this is it. And also, we got a lot of context from the relationship. Now let's move on to the update to see how this story ends. First, I'd like to thank everyone for their feedback from my previous post. It gave me a lot to think about the strong cultural differences between us and about some specific personal issues too. On sending money to her parents and filial piety in general, I decided that I didn't really have any claim on how she spent money on her family and the cultural institution was too deeply ingrained to try and tackle it. So long as we had separate incomes and savings, I think it makes sense for her to fulfill her duty to her parents if she sees fit. On a wife controlling all finances, there seemed to be much less consensus as to whether or not that was normal or the done thing. In spite of some people thinking that it might be a good idea, I definitely still wasn't on board. It also annoyed me how we were splitting bills was heavily weighted against me, but she still made me feel guilty anytime I asked her to pay for anything. Then, something that I didn't ask about but came up anyway was how we shared responsibilities in the relationship outside of money. She has very specific and strict ideas about what I guess you would call chivalry. In her view, men should treat women like princesses all the time. There have been a few examples of her being careless about my money. The worst was a few months ago. We were due to take a trip to my home country. A week before we got into a fight and she told me to cancel our accommodation reservation. I thought this was the first step in a breakup, which at the time horrified me. I cancelled the reservation but begged her to reconsider. After I apologized and she got over her anger, she was shocked to learn that we had nowhere to stay for our holiday. In the end, I booked a much more expensive last-minute hotel on the understanding that we would split the cost. Months later, she still hasn't paid me back and she sulks every time I bring it up. All this made me start to look at her and how she spent money in a new light. Shout out to user Ralph1 for predicting almost exactly which brands of handbags she owned. Gucci, Louis Vuitton, Chanel, Hermes, etc. I did some research on her favorite bags and shoes and scarves, and at a guess, I would say she had about £30,000 worth of luxury goods that she liked to wear and carry often. I had no idea clothes and accessories could cost so much money. I'm not exactly an anti-materialistic person, but I was shocked by this. I figured that spending habits would have to be part of any conversation on our future together. I didn't want to give up on what I thought was a good relationship just yet, so I decided to take a risk and open up to her about my financials. I showed her a summary of my income, expenditure, budget, and savings. This was a mistake. She pretty much immediately started talking about what we could buy with my savings and saying that I wasn't earning enough money, so I should stop messing around with computers and go back to working in finance, which is not going to happen. I tried to explain to her that I was showing her this so she could see how I lived my life and how savings were for the future, not so she could plan to expand her lifestyle now. We went on for hours back and forth. I think somebody called it in the last thread, but she really did think what's yours is mine and what's mine is mine. I don't even know if she ever came to understand how I would have a problem with that. It seems so natural to her that I think she couldn't even see my side of things. I did learn that she doesn't have any money saved at all. She does earn a lot, but she feels she has to send any money left over at the end of the month back to her parents. That's why she lives an extravagant lifestyle buying luxury goods. If she doesn't have any money, then she doesn't have to send it back. I still don't really know what financial situation her parents are in. They might not even need the money for all I know, but they all feel that her sending it has to happen. The next morning, she asked me to move to Singapore with her, although she is Shanghainese, not Singaporean. She wanted to move to Singapore to be close enough to visit her family, but still be able to find high-paying work in her field. And since we were planning our futures together, this is what we should do. This pretty much blew my mind. I was trying to figure out if there was anything left to salvage in our relationship. I'd built up a lot of resentment over being treated like a eunuch servant and being expected to hand over all my money for the privilege, and she thought that was a good time for us to move to the other side of the world. So I told her I was breaking up with her. At this point, I don't know if the two of us were ever on the same page about anything, because she never saw this coming. She was distraught and didn't know why I was unhappy, and she'd do anything to keep me, and that I was the best thing that ever happened to her. I fell for this for a couple of days before she got screaming angry at me for breaking a wine glass while I was washing dishes. I'd argue we were equally at fault. She demanded I pay for it. Holy crap, how much can a wine glass cost? And apologize for being careless. I wish I could say I did something cool like just leave cash on the table and walk out, but I argued back and got dragged into the whole thing. I ended up replacing the glass and apologizing, but the next morning I gathered all my stuff from her place and took it home before she woke up. I came back later, woke her up, and told her we had to break up. I'd already explained all the reasons why last time we talked, and I was afraid that she would manipulate me into staying again, so I walked out right after telling her. A cowardly way to do it, I know. That was last weekend, feeling pretty numb, with a lot of anger and resentment underneath the surface. Now that I'm away from her, I see she treated me really badly for pretty much the whole relationship. I'm pissed at myself for not standing up to her and her tantrums and selfishness sooner. I don't know why I let her get away with it for so long. Extended update from OP's comments. I think her "I spend all my money on luxuries so I don't have to send it to China" excuse was just an excuse. Just a gut feeling, but I think that was her way of explaining it in a way that I would understand. Honestly, it sounds crazier to me than sending money to relatives, but I think she thought I would think it was more responsible or something. Anyway, she loved giving the impression of wealth. Any interaction with her Chinese friends was, to her, a chance to show off and to judge them. I was always uncomfortable with just how mean she was about her Chinese girlfriends behind their backs. I thought we were compatible. 90% of the things were good, but 10% of the time she would get angry at me for something I didn't understand. It's only in the last few weeks that I've started to wonder if that 90-10 split would continue for the rest of our lives, and it seemed a lot less tenable. I mean, the good stuff was great, and she was really loving and tentative. She laughed at my jokes and made me feel good about myself. We had a lot in common intellectually. She's smarter than almost anyone I've ever met, and I'm more practical and down to earth, so it seemed like a good match. But once every couple of weeks or so, she would blow up over something I couldn't predict. By the end, it felt like I was working all the time to keep her happy and to avoid her throwing a tantrum. I would get literally sick every time she got angry at me. With a little bit of distance now, I think that made it hard for me to see the whole thing objectively. I just wanted to get back to the good times. I'm going to be honest, it is entirely possible I don't have the best self-esteem. Wow, OP, sounds like that relationship was completely one-sided and she was definitely pushing for more of that, so it's a good thing that you are out of there. Hopefully now you'll have time to work on your self-esteem. So all the best, OP, and thank you for sharing. Take care. And it's that time that we've reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. I really did enjoy reading them to you. So if you did, then don't be shy and go ahead and give the video a like. And don't forget to subscribe or even share this video with people that you might think will enjoy my storytelling. Also, if you have the time, go down to the video description and check out all the links I have for you, from our Discord community to my channel merch. And finally, I'd like to say thank you for watching. It really means a lot to me that you enjoy my videos. And having said all that, I'll see you guys in the next video.